The kettlebell clean is a crucial lift, serving not just as a fantastic exercise in its own right, but also as a way to deliver the kettlebell from the floor to the rack, where it can be used for other exercises like squats, presses, and jerks. It really is the key that unlocks the kettlebell kingdom. If you're over 40, this is the perfect exercise to develop explosive power, grip strength, and coordination without beating up your joints. But most people get it wrong, muscling up the kettlebell and beating up their forearms.
So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to master this crucial lift once and for all, step by step. I'm going to teach you two versions of the kettlebell clean. The first one is the dead start clean, and this is how you'll take a kettlebell from the floor to the rack. The second one is the repetition style clean, and this is a fantastic conditioning exercise all on its own. And it's crucial if you're somebody who likes to train with kettlebell flows and transition from movement to movement without putting the kettlebell down. So the kettlebell clean is a hip hinging exercise. And if you don't know what that is, well, watch this video from about the 4 minutes 30 second mark and you'll find a nice tutorial on how to hip hinge there. So this is where the clean ends, right? This is called the rack position. And essentially in kettlebell training, this is your base camp, because from this position, you'll initiate things like presses, jerks, squats, windmills, etc., etc. So it's worth spending a little bit of time getting this position dialed in. So the first thing I want to talk about is where the kettlebell sits. It's essentially sitting a little bit on the shoulder, a little bit on the bicep, and a little bit on the chest, okay? We want to keep the forearm as vertical as possible, and we want to stay relatively tight here. We don't want to be out here, we want no space here, okay? Now let's talk about the wrist. So it's said in boxing that there is no wrists, and the same thing applies to kettlebell training. So we want to avoid the wrist tipping back like this. If you do Olympic lifts and you spend a lot of time in this position, you can actually end up stretching out the tendons of the forearm and the wrist and actually make your wrists less stable. So we definitely want to avoid that. So not this. You can have a completely locked wrist like you were throwing a punch. This is a good position. And it's also okay to let the wrist turn in a little bit. This is also not an unfavorable, not a weak position, but we definitely want to avoid going here in our kettlebell training. Okay, so the dead start clean. How do we take the kettlebell from the floor to the rack? Okay, so we're going to start a little bit back away from the kettlebell, and we're going to go into our hip hinge, right? We're going to put the hips back, and we want to feel that stretch in the hamstring and glutes. Now you can think of this like a bow and arrow, right? Think of the hamstrings and glutes as the bow string and the hips as the arrow. So we want to get that tension, and then when we're at max range, then we're going to pop forward, and then our arrow kettlebell is going to fly. So we're going to start in this position. We're going to take the kettlebell off the ground a little bit, and we're going to almost lean backwards, right? To really get into the hamstrings and glutes. This shoulder, we're going to pull it down and then back. So we want to suck the shoulder into the torso. We're going to bring the kettlebell back, explode up, bring the kettlebell up here. Okay, put it back. That good stretch. Think of that shoulder position down and back. Find the hamstrings and glutes, height between the legs, bring it up. Okay, now this is not a curl. What's going to create the power to bring the kettlebell up is this point of contact between your inner thigh and your forearm, right? That's what's pushing you forward. Now, as far as hand position, I want you to think about when the kettlebell goes back, we're going to lead with the thumb, right? So it's going to be thumb backwards. As we drive forward, that kettlebell is going to turn, and we're going to end up also thumb backwards. So thumb backwards, come forward, thumb backwards. Thumb backwards, keeping the shoulder packed, and thumb backwards, okay? Another important point on the kettlebell clean is we want to make sure that we tame that arc, right? So we want to make sure we're keeping the kettlebell close to us. A good analogy is to imagine when you do your clean that you're trying to pull up your zipper line, right? If I was wearing a hoodie, which I should be because it's raining, I'd be pulling my zipper up here, right? I wouldn't be out here, it would be tight. So I show you from the front. Hinge back, zipper line. The next thing to bear in mind is keeping the upper arm tight against your ribs. So once the kettlebell goes here, we want to keep the arm here. We don't want to bring the kettlebell here, and then when we drive forward, let it come all the way out here, and then bring it in. That's going to bash up your shoulders. It's going to take away your power. The key is, once the upper arm comes here, it stays there, okay? Tight, flush against your ribs. That's going to set you up for a nice landing in the rack position. Let's put all of that together, right? Hinge the hips back, kettlebell out in front. Think about those thumb positions, right? We're going to lead slightly with the thumb, shoulder down and back. Hike, zipper line explode, and the kettlebell lands lightly on your shoulder, bicep, and chest in that good rack position. So one of the terms you'll hear a lot in kettlebell training is taming the arc. And what that refers to is making the path of the kettlebell as short as possible. So I'll show you a bad example where I don't tame the arc. Right, do you see how the kettlebell went all the way out in front, right? Show you again. Right, that was an untamed arc. Good arc would be, see how the kettlebell stayed very close to my body the entire time? And I have a great drill to help you learn to do just that. So a great drill you can use to help you learn to tame the arc is to use a wall. Now make sure that you're very careful with this, because there is a possibility of you breaking your house, and we don't want that, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to practice the cleans relatively close to the wall. We're going to hinge back, bring it up. Now this is going to provide you immediate feedback, right? This barrier, not to let the kettlebell come forward. Okay, let's get a little closer. Make sure you're still doing the hinge, right? The hips do still sit back. And the wall can be a great teacher on how to keep the kettlebell close to you, how to maintain that zipper line, and how to really tighten things up in your kettlebell clean. When I first started kettlebell training, the clean was so hard. I just couldn't figure it out. My timing was all off. My arc was all the way out here. And it wasn't until I went to the wall and started training it like this that it all came together and I could finally learn the clean. So once you've learned how to clean from the floor, the repetition clean is a relatively short hop. So what we're going to do now is we're going to initiate with the dead start. And now instead of returning it to the floor, we are going to basically throw it between the legs. Once again, leading with the thumb, keeping the forearm tight, and then we're going to bring it up. One of the biggest challenges when you're first learning the clean is to have it land lightly in the rack. So I'm going to show you a bad example, and then I'm going to show you a good example. Bad example would be this, right? There's a lot of impact. I'm basically hitting myself with the kettlebell, versus a good example where the kettlebell just slightly touches. So assuming your technique is dialed into a decent level, landing the kettlebell lightly becomes a matter of timing. And unfortunately, I can't teach you that. And truth be told, nobody can teach you timing. However, just because it cannot be taught doesn't mean it cannot be learned. And you will learn it through practice and through repetition. However, if you have a career or a situation where having some bruises on your forearm just isn't going to fly, you can get yourself some of those thick tennis sweatbands to protect against bruising, or you can train in a thick hoodie or sweater while you're getting the timing dialed in. Generally though, it usually takes a session or two, and 99% of people are going to be all good on this, and they'll be landing the kettlebell like a pro. So where would the kettlebell clean fit into your program? Well, one option is to look at the way people use the barbell clean as a tool to develop power. And once you get past the age of 40, if you do not maintain your power, you will lose your power. And power is crucial. It's good to be fast. It's good to be explosive. And the clean is a great tool to help you do that. And this would be relatively low repetitions. Think about 3 to 6 reps done with a heavy weight. This will help develop fast twitch fibers in the hamstrings and glutes, and can actually lead to a little bit of bicep muscle as well. And when we compare it to the barbell version, first of all, to state the obvious, you don't need a barbell. You just need a kettlebell. It's a much smaller, more readily accessible piece of equipment. There's also a much shorter learning curve. The barbell clean is a complicated movement. There's a lot of moving parts in it, and it can be very difficult to learn without a coach to teach you. Kettlebell clean, not so much. Much easier learned. If you apply this video, you can learn it. So that's a great way to use it. Another option is to use it as a conditioning tool. High repetition cleans will get your heart and lungs racing. One particular version that I found fun is to do 10 on the right, 10 on the left, 9 on the right, 9 on the left, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That way you'll find you get a very good conditioning workout in a very short amount of time. So the kettlebell clean is an absolutely crucial lift. Please take the time to learn it. It will unlock so many options for you in your kettlebell training. So that's it for the kettlebell clean. Originally, my intention for this video was to actually teach the clean and press and the clean and jerk. But I quickly realized that the kettlebell clean is such an important lift that it deserved a video all of its own. And if you found the information in this video useful, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel so much. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you. See you in the next video.